Good morning, everybody. The Simple Handicap for Friday, October 11th. Thank you for making me a part of your morning. It was a good start to NFL week number 6 for the service as we won with over 47.5 on Thursday Night Football. Got a little bit tight. There's no question about it. Look, before we get into the market rundown, I'm getting old. Year 16 or 17 now of doing this, 32 years old. I can't explain the review process anymore in the NFL. What is a replay assist? What is a challenge? If there's replay assist on every play, why do we have challenges? If we have challenges, why is there replay assist? Why is there replay assist or challenges if the review center does not have the enhanced feed? As we saw the case on the punt muff yesterday where they didn't have the right video feed to make the call that the broadcast had. Did they not pay for Amazon Prime? I don't know. If you can explain it to me in the comments for when replay assist is triggered and why there are still challenges if every play has replay assist, I would love to know it. I know I've harped on this on Twitter quite a bit, and people are starting to get maybe a little bit tired of it. I'm not putting on a tinfoil hat here. I'm not screaming conspiracy. And please don't comment down below and say, well, this is because the NFL is rigging games. We're not going there on this show. We're keeping it professional, but I don't understand it. And watching that happen last night made no sense to me because the series before, on the incomplete pass on second down, 2 seconds. They went, replay assist, redid the incomplete pass, backed them up on third down. There was no problem. But something like that where you have 2 minutes, I don't know. Fortunately, didn't matter in the end for the total nor the point spread. Would have set San Francisco up to potentially put the game away earlier than they did. I don't know. I have a hard time figuring out what it is. And if you know the answer, I'd love to know it down in the comments below. All that said, want to know for the week? Let's get to it with the market rundown. And the last market rundown for NFL week number 6 here on the podcast feed. Starts off Jacksonville Jags on the road at the Chicago Bears. Bears 1.5 point favorites, minus 105 currently at Chris, minus 110 at Circa, minus 105 at FanDuel, Buckeye, and Bet Online. Multiple releases yesterday on the Jacksonville Jags, taking out the 2.5s, taking out the 2s. We're down as low as minus 1 at some spots this morning, and a number that continues to trend when you're looking at the injury report for the Bears. Jaquan Brisker, defensive back, he's played 97% of snaps so far this season. Tevin Jenkins, also looking at Terrell Smith, another defensive back for the Bears. Banged up secondary all of a sudden for Chicago, dealing with some issues to some key names. In Jacksonville, speaking about Evan Ingram and pressers, sounds like he is on track to come back this week. As far as Tyson Campbell, it sounds like this week is a bit of a long shot for him to come off of IR and play, which means we'll probably see him next week against the New England Patriots for the Jags back-to-back London games. Over on the service, we're still tied into the over on this game, and this total is still holding steady at 44.5. Chris has been hanging out at 45 for the last couple of days, and they're the high point in the market. Kind of a good indication of what you're looking at. But certainly in the last 24 hours here, we've seen plenty of Jacksonville money come in, bringing this number down, which could continue to slide between now and kickoff bright and early on Sunday morning. Washington on the road at Baltimore. Before I get into the game, I probably said Jacksonville on the road against Chicago. It's obviously a London game. It's been a long week. I may have missed that if I didn't. I'm correcting it in case because it'll hit the comments. I've been getting days wrong on the shows. We're week 6. We're in the thick of it. It's obviously a London game, bright and early Sunday morning. Washington on the road at the Baltimore Ravens. 6.5 took money yesterday for Baltimore. It got to 7. And honestly, it got to 7, and I went and I popped up our internal chat, and I went to type in Ravens back to 7. By the time I hit enter, those 7s were taken out, and we're back to 6.5, and it's the juiced 6.5. As we talked about yesterday and on the Tuesday show, there's plenty of shows. There's plenty of support for Washington already in the market. We saw a little bit of action on Baltimore with some bets that came in, not from a release, but from some betting groups that pushed us back up to 7, and then there was disagreement. Like, there's a big divide on this game, and it's going back and forth because Baltimore, in the spot they're in, not overly positive. Washington is just a team that everybody wants to bet on based on how the season has gone. There is some injury news to watch for. Brian Robinson for the Commanders. Looks like he's 50-50 at best for this game. That would be a big loss for him if he's out against this Ravens defense. Honestly, I'm most curious in this game. What in the world is the Washington defense going to do to get stops against this Ravens offense? That's my big question. The total still holding steady at 52. This one saw a little bit of under money in the last about 12 hours, got to 51.5 for a second. It didn't last because this is a Commanders defense that can absolutely get exposed on Sunday for just how bad they really are. Arizona on the road at the Green Bay Packers, still 5 at Chris. Circa's now at 6. And then we're seeing 5.5 elsewhere across the board. I used the Packers yesterday in my video with Sam P over on Chicken Dinner. Gave up -5 as there were 4.5s showing up on the board. I was a little bit surprised to see it tipping. I think it was probably, if I had to guess without knowing the exact source, probably just a numbers play as this was a shorter total. But we're seeing the weather in this game clear up a little bit. To me, it just screams a good spot, as we've talked about all week, for this Packers offense to get right against a weak Cardinals defense. Looks like Jordan Love is getting a lot closer to 100% with how they're talking about him being more willing to go under center in practice. That's the expectation for the game as well. That would be a big boost to the offense. So this is starting to move up. I could definitely see it potentially ticking up a little bit more, but interesting to see Circa go to 6. And that move initially happened yesterday just after kickoff of the Thursday night football game. And so it was kind of a running game move, and this got up to about 6 -115 and then got taken back. And it was kind of a bit of a stance relative to the rest of the market, which hadn't got to 6 yet. So let's see how that shakes down between now and kickoff. Houston on the road at the New England Patriots. Houston, a 6.5-point favorite across the screen. Most prices showing -115. Total in this game, 38, but shaded under. We're seeing 37.5 for the first time this week at Circa. 37.5 for the first time this week at FanDuel. So under money continues to come into the market. Yesterday, there was a release from a pro bettor. He gave out New England at +7. That took out the 7s on the board. We've been at 6.5 cents. I don't know if I agree with that. I'm not running to bet Houston because of it, but I tell you, like the way the Pats are speaking about Drake May yesterday, it's like we're expecting him to make mistakes. We're expecting him to have difficulty against the Houston defense, but we know that he can make the throws. Like it's an odd thing to hear and be said, and it's such a tough matchup. But as we look, Joe Mixon back to practice for Houston. As I look through the Twitter doctor back and forth, speculation that he could play, it doesn't sound overly optimistic. Like, where's the ground game coming for Houston against this Pats defense? Because they're without Nico Collins, and boy, once he went down last week, it didn't look like the same team and the same offense against the Bills, and they couldn't manufacture a lot on the ground, and that's really how Miami had their most success against this Pats defense. And so what are we getting from Tank Dell? It's been a lot of back and forth on what he is as a receiver this season. You take out Nico Collins, I mean, that's a big loss for the Houston Texans. And so there's question marks on both sides. It's a stay away for me, but I sure was surprised to see that Pats money come in yesterday on that release. Tampa Bay on the road at the New Orleans Saints. 3.5 remains the number 4 Tampa Bay across the screen. Total, we are seeing 41 for the first time in the market at Circa this morning. We are seeing 41 as well over at DK, slightly shaded to the over. No other 41s yet. It keeps on coming down. My guess would be in this game, if we see 41 across the board, we're getting over money. There's just such a good spot historically for these teams that have the 9-5 rest advantage. The Saints defense was on the field for more than 80 plays on Monday Night Football. And I got to tell you, I did ESPN radio in Memphis yesterday. I was being asked about the game. I'm kind of impressed with Spencer Rattler in his press conferences. Just the youth that he brings, obviously making his first NFL start. He's not speaking like it. He wants to get Chris Olave involved. Raheed Shaheed is going to be back for this game. He's talking about throwing the football. He's talking about being comfortable and opening up the offense. It sounds like a lot of positives from the Saints and Rattler, which could be an interesting upgrade. He's effectively playing with house money in this spot, but it's just historically a spot that trends very much to the over with this rest disadvantage for the Saints in this spot against the extra rest team for the Bucs. I think you're looking at a path where the Buccaneers can certainly have success on offense as well. So if this does get down to a 41 flat, I would expect to see over money. I'm curious as this keeps trending the way it is with Rattler in these pressers and the talk about the Saints offense getting back to the play action pass, something they've been away from the last couple of weeks. Do we see Saints money as well? 2.5 to 3.5. Pretty big move for Derek Carr, as we're putting that in the same category as losing Tua. We're putting that in the same category as losing Jordan Love. It's a lot for Derek Carr. Cleveland Browns on the road at the Philadelphia Eagles. So I talked about this being really the first big favorite we've seen get bet, as Philadelphia was down to 8.5. They got bet up to 9.5. Yesterday morning, they got bet to 10. Not just at Circa by itself. There were other books that went to 10 too. So kind of uncharted territory for big favorites this season. Have seen really no great case for Cleveland made so far this week. I was texting with another pro bettor outside of the group, and he was saying that Cleveland is a play for him just based on the number being outrageous. And we're looking at aggregate ratings having Cleveland down as low as 27th. Market ratings have them down in that same range as well. Like, it is a massive drop-off for Cleveland. But Philly gets all their guys back on offense. They're coming out of the bye. It's a must-win game for them at home to correct things after a couple ugly performances. This is a big game for Philly. That can't be understated. Cleveland's defense, home road splits are still just so noisy and so drastic. So what do we get from that Cleveland defense is as big of a question as what do we get from the Cleveland offense. And this is a team that's probably still a week or two away from getting everybody back on the O-line, from getting Chubb back in the backfield. Once that happens, we start having different discussions. But for now, I would challenge anybody to present a good case for Cleveland just in a matchup sense. I get the number is very high for the Eagles and how bad their defense has been. But, boy, it's sure hard to find many advantages for the Browns on the field in the matchup sense in this game. Indianapolis on the road at the Tennessee Titans. We're seeing soft threes for the first time all week. Really wish we would have been able to act on Tennessee earlier in the week. Unfortunate that just timing-wise how that went. Tons of pro money on the Titans. What I will say, was speaking with another pro yesterday. It was a big day of back and forths. You want to talk about the Titans team total. I'm not a team total guy. However, in this game, you're looking at 20.5 minus 140, 21.5 minus 110. I see the 140 at Pinnacle. I see the 140 at 20.5 at Bet Online. Other places that have posted have the 21.5 minus 110. I look at this as a breakout spot for the Titans offense. Now, breaking out relative to what they've done this year, less the Miami game, not a very high bar, but everything that's being said so far in pressers. Throwing the football more Hopkins, more Ridley, more pass. Like, everything's about the offense. You want an opponent that can allow that to open up. Who better than the Indianapolis Colts? Just did the same thing to the Jags last week. I mean, this is a Colts defense, even with Pay likely returning and a good chance that Moore will be back. This defense has so many issues that I think Tennessee is going to look really good offensively in this game. So if you missed the move, you're looking at that team total. I think that's a good way to potentially still play this one on Sunday. LA Chargers on the road at the Denver Broncos. Chargers back to a full 3-point favorite. You want to talk about a game that was a little bit miffed. We were not able to get in time. Certainly fits the bill with the Chargers in this spot. 3 minus 10 is the number now across the board. With the one exception being Chris at 3 minus 105. Total continues to come down 35.5, shaded to the under. Pittsburgh on the road at the Las Vegas Raiders. Even with Aiden O'Connell starting, we're not seeing anything in this game whatsoever. Still locked in at 3 for Pittsburgh. Total in this game still 36.5 as it has been for the majority of the week. Atlanta on the road at the Carolina Panthers. Atlanta still a 6-point favorite across the screen with a total of 47. I think my hopes and dreams of getting a 7 with Carolina not going to be realized for the weekend. A little bit unfortunate. Was hoping on the heels of another service release from the Falcons, maybe it pushes it up a little further. Didn't quite get there. I'm sure some folks nabbed the 7 off of the bye at 6.5, but at 6 it looks like it's going to hold steady there. We have the under in this game from earlier in the week. Detroit on the road at the Dallas Cowboys. Lions still 3-point favorites across the board. Total in this game 52. Heard another big group was on the Detroit Lions fairly quietly. We haven't seen too much in the market in way of the Lions. It did push up a little bit yesterday once limits were bumped on Thursday, and you saw a bit of an increase. Nothing substantial, but could certainly see matchup-wise with the Cowboys' defensive line injuries, how the Lions could be appealing in this spot coming out of the bye, especially with the potential that Frank Ragnow could be back at center on that offensive line. Cincinnati Bengals on the road at the New York Giants. Bengals 3.5-point favorites. No more soft threes available for the Giants in this game. Those 3 minus 20s were taken out for the Bengals. We're back to 3.5. Total in this game hanging around 48. When it comes to injury reports for the week, I think the Giants are one of the more peculiar But that's a tongue twister to throw in by choice at the end of the podcast. I say that because Malik Neighbors still not a full go in practice, and we're now more than 2 weeks removed from the initial injury that he suffered. Yet there's photos of him went out on Instagram. He was out at a concert. So I'm kind of looking at this and I'm like, he's still not progressing in the protocol. He's out at a concert. I don't equate concerts with being dark, quiet environments. What's going on here? Because Brian Daboll certainly sounds like he's being conservative with his star wide receiver. Not sure what we're getting. And then for Singletary in the backfield, although maybe after seeing what the backup backs had on the field against Seattle becomes a bit of a moot point, he seems about a coin flip to go in this game on Sunday as well. I don't know what to make of the Neighbors situation. I have a hard time thinking if Neighbors misses that this is a game where the Giants offense is going to compete against the Bengals. We've talked about all the motivational factors they have going in this game on the defensive side. If he's out, we saw Seattle take money last week in a big way. Didn't matter, but once that Neighbors news hit, it was even partially on speculation. Like there was anticipation from the injury report that he could miss. That number started moving. He was out. It moved even more. What do we get back to if Neighbors is ruled out in this game? So today, he's going to have a good participation in practice. Otherwise, the Giants have to run him through specific drills tomorrow on Saturday to get things right. Man, it's a weird spot with Neighbors. So waiting to see. But if he is ruled out, I certainly think this comes up off of the 3.5 between now and kickoff. Then Monday Night Football, it's the Buffalo Bills on the road at the New York Jets. Buffalo, a 2.5-point favorite. Total in this game, 40.5. Khalil Shakir, uncertain for this game. James Cook appears to be dealing with turf toe. Neither were active at practice yesterday. That was practice 1 of the week because this is obviously the Monday Night Football game, so that's a big question mark. Aaron Rodgers is going to be good to go despite being limited in practice. You also have Jets news where Todd Downing is in as the play caller. Now, we know a couple things about Todd Downing. He's very much in the Nathaniel Hackett realm of talent when it comes to offensive coordinators and play callers. 2 things that I would say. 1, his week-to-week game planning in Tennessee for 2 years was very poor. There was not anything substantial provided as an edge early on in games coming out. You didn't have a Matt LaFleur-esque style of play to begin games. Game planning, not really his strong suit. And again, I'm not trying to make the comparison between those two, but I'm just referencing someone who's always awesome with his initial play calling early in games. You're not getting that from Downing. And so that worries me a bit on the short week. I'll touch on that in a second. The other thing I want to say is a lot of times in these comparison scenarios, we look at what happened with the team from an offensive production perspective the year prior to the new offensive coordinator arrival, and then what that OC did in his subsequent time. And if you're comparing the Arthur Smith-led offenses of the Tennessee Titans to the Todd Downing offenses, you're seeing a drop from top 10 levels to bottom 10 levels. Now, what I would say and caveat with this specific comparison is Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill missed a chunk of time collectively in both of those seasons. When you do the on-off splits for Todd Downing's Titans with those guys on the field, and you do the splits with them off the field, you're looking at an offense for Tennessee that was above average in those games. So there is some discrepancy and a little bit of noise in that, but going from Hackett to Downing is not an upgrade that is saving the Jets season. My worry in this game specifically, teams that beat the Buffalo Bills are teams that can operate out of a lot of heavy personnel, can run the football, can stress the spine of the defense for Buffalo, and avoid having to go outside to take on the corners. It's why a team like Baltimore had so much success against the Bills, why a team like Arizona moved the football really well back in week 1. My worry in this game and in this matchup, even though the Jets do use the 5th highest rate of 2 tight end sets, they don't run the football well out of those 2 tight end sets. My worry is that with the poor game planning, that the Jets fall into this quick passing game and really try to take on these outside corners. If they can avoid doing that and they can get into a better game plan, like we talked about, attacking the middle, that's where you want to go with this Bills defense. If they do that, I think the Jets have a path to success. The reason I'm bringing all of this up is because if you look at just the scenario of this game, you're talking about a week 5 firing of a head coach. You're talking about staff, offense and defense, with their job on the line. A 2-3 team firing their head coach, relatively unheard of. This just screams desperation for the Jets in this spot. It has so many just classic and traditional betting scenarios working in their favor. However, on one mind, you're like, well, just blindly play that because I want to bet into that. On the other hand, you're like, this matchup for the Jets on offense, it isn't great based on what they can do well. And there's a lot of uncertainty with Downing, which perhaps is an advantage for the Jets because the Bills aren't as certain as what they're getting from a game plan. But again, like that's a tough matchup for the Jets offense. And my last thought on this game would be the Bills offense really struggles with teams that have athletic corners outside that can play a lot of cover 1, that can play a lot of cover 3. That's exactly what the Jets have and exactly what the Jets do. And if you're without Shakir and all of a sudden Cook, who's really your weapon in some of these games, is going to miss as well, that's a pretty positive matchup for the Jets defense, which certainly lacks no motivation with their leader now stepping in as head coach, directly reflecting what his review is going to be coming out of this game Monday night and then Tuesday morning. So something else to think about when you're equating that matchup. Very fun game to look at. Very fun game to talk about. I've not bet on it yet, but I thought I'd share a couple of those thoughts as I've been kind of quick on this game, as there's been a lot of question marks for it so far this week with so many changes on the New York side of the ball. All right, that will do it for me this morning. Have a fantastic Friday, everybody. If you've enjoyed the content this week, you're watching on YouTube, the subscribe button's down below. We're pushing towards 10,000 subs. Let's help us get there by the end of October. If you've yet to subscribe, you're enjoying the show, down below. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify and you have a second before you go this Friday morning, hit pause, leave a review. I appreciate it very much. It helps with the podcast getting up the charts, getting more downloads, getting more listens, and helps me out as well, continuing to grow the show and being able to share more information as we go. Have a fantastic Friday, everybody. We'll chat to you Sunday around 4:30 p.m. Pacific time on the live stream.